Hello and welcome to the CUFI UK podcast for Zion's sake. My name is Alastair, this is Alex.
Hello.
And we would like to welcome you as we discuss things relating to Israel and the Jewish people. And at this time, there is a staggering rise in anti-Semitism here in the UK and in various parts around the world. And we're going to begin by discussing a planned pro-Palestinian march in the City of London this weekend. Of course, the last few weekends since the 7th of October massacre in Israel, we have seen pro-Palestinian marches on the streets here in Britain. And this weekend it will coincide with Armistice Day on Saturday. And of course, on Sunday is Remembrance Sunday. Yeah. A very important date in the calendar when we remember all those that gave their lives, those who sacrificed their lives in the two world wars and in conflicts since. And there has been a great deal of controversy and backlash in response to these plans for a march in the City of London at the time when the country will be remembering all those that have fallen.
Yeah, that's right. And so for people who are international, they may be wondering why we are wearing poppies on our person. And yeah, the reason why is because this is an act of remembrance. And so this is a very somber time. It's a time where we remember the fallen. We thanking them for the sacrifice they made for our freedoms. And so most of the country is patriotic in that way and wants to actually honor and remember those who died for our freedom. But unfortunately, the pro-Palestinian groups have chosen this day and this time to instead, cause an uproar, really.
Well, that's right. And I think it's very important to recognise that this isn't just coinciding. Okay, this isn't just a practical problem of there's going to be remembrance occasions taking place and there's a march also taking place. They have called for they're calling it the million person march. Yeah. There is a sentiment that goes against the very core values of what Remembrance Day is. Yeah. And, Remembrance Day isn't just about memory. It's not only about remembering all those in the armed service who have given their lives. It's actually the fact that we are heirs of what they fought for. Okay, we have inherited things through their sacrifice and through the victory that was accomplished. Yeah. We're heirs. One of the things is freedom. We've inherited the freedom. We've inherited the security and the safety of all those that gave their lives in World War II, as well as all those in conflict since. The security that has brought. We've inherited those things. But we're also heirs of a moral cause. Okay, the moral cause, because actually, in World War II, Britain took the right side of history. Yeah. Okay, it was a war that was between good and evil. Yeah. And that there's probably no better example of the manifestation of the evil perpetrated by Nazi Germany than the obliteration or attended obliteration and the massacre of 6 million Jews. Yeah. And so the sacrifice which those of the British forces and the Allies together was actually the liberation of the persecution of the Jewish people in Europe. Yeah. Now, this was a generation that knew evil when they saw it. Yeah. And they had courage to do something about it. And it was through their sacrifice, that we have inherited all of those values. And that is why, in my opinion, this should not take place. And we must stand out for this evil. Because, Hamas has, by their own word, declared to wipe out the Jewish people entirely. Yeah. They want to do what the Nazis failed to do.
Yeah.
So there is this connection.
Yeah.
And if you do not recognize that connection, then we need to wake up.
Yeah.
Because all those that are protesting on our streets are not just giving validity to Hamas, by their own confession, are standing in solidarity with these terrorists and are standing against the Jewish people, against the liberties, against the freedom, about the morals of this nation.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is why it should not take place.
Yeah.
And if it is going to take place, we should send them off towards in the direction of Gaza, where they can protest against Hamas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think, very passionate, and you are right. Like, morally, this is wrong. And they have clearly chosen this as a provocation to try and, is the most insulting thing they can do.
Yes.
And I think it shows that because there is a spirit behind it, which is the same as, like you were saying, we're not saying all Palestinian, peaceful protesters are Nazis or anything like that, but it is a spirit behind it which is going against good, right?
It is. I mean, I understand. Well, I understand why people, the argument in terms of the right to protest and things like that. But in this instance, based on, I'm not going to repeat what I've just said, but on that basis of the connection, that this is actually a provocation and goes against the very values that we stand as our country, I think we should not allow it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly think we should make a moral stand. Could you imagine, in the lead up to World War II, knowing about some of the atrocities that the Nazis had already perpetrated, that there was a march in support for Nazi Germany? It would not be allowed on our streets.
Yeah.
Okay? I couldn't care less about the freedom to, to protest. Okay? There has to be a line. And I think this is crossing that line. And I understand that there are those people among them who are calling for a ceasefire, and they might have different interpretations of what a ceasefire means. But look, if you are making the effort to join the million, which is the million that they are hoping to congregate in London, then I'm sorry, you're affiliating yourself with evil.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it is one of these sort of black and white issues which is stirring up a lot of emotion in this country. There are clear indications from opinion polls that actually there is a majority who do not think this should go ahead.
Correct. Yes, Sky News actually published a poll today, and it showed that 50% of UK population, those who are polled, do not believe it should go ahead. Now, that doesn't mean 50% do. The 50%, the other 50% are broken down by those who believe it should and those who actually don't know if it should or not. They don't have an opinion. So, the majority, they do believe that it should not go ahead.
Yeah, because this is a time where we should remember, it's kind of like some of the core principles of like patriotic Britain sort of thing, isn't it? Like this is one of the key events which marks, that sort of occasion. And I think it's fair to say that many of those who are actually choosing to protest against Israel at that time, because they are wording it as a peaceful protest, they want it to be about ceasefire and all the rest of it. But ultimately, we know that within that, a large majority of them are actually not about peace, they're anti-Israel. And so, we know that there is support for Hamas that has happened in multiple protests throughout the United Kingdom. Yes. We know that there has been provocation, intimidation of people who either support Israel or not even support Israel. There's protests even outside McDonald's and KFC and things like that because McDonald's is affiliated with Israel in some way.
Well, the McDonald's have actually provided meals for the frontline troops in Israel.
Yeah, you're right. And so,
and they do not like it.
No, that's the thing. So,
they're not loving it.
Yeah.
I mean, the pro-Palestinian they're not loving it.
Yeah. But the crazy thing is, McDonald's in this country we've seen protesters, Palestinian protesters, standing outside McDonald's, intimidating and abusing people for going to McDonald's in this country. So a mum and her kids trying to walk to McDonald's being shouted, "Shame on you." People getting into altercations outside McDonald's. The people inside McDonald's don't even know what's going on. They're like, why are they protesting? But anyway, we're seeing this sort of inflaming of tensions from Palestinian protesters to the point where even wearing a poppy and walking down the street, when you see Palestinian protesters, they're then confronting people with poppies. They're unfortunately purposely targeting cenotaphs and war memorials now.
Well, there was a gentleman, a poppy seller, that was actually attacked in this country.
Yeah, they're trying to steal...
by a protester.
Yeah.
The cenotaph or war memorial in Rochdale is now under police guard.
Yeah.
Because of it having been vandalised.
Exactly.
We've already seen the National Cenotaph in London. But I mean, there's been a lot of talk this week about the march not going, past the cenotaph and so on and so forth. But actually, the cenotaph has already been targeted.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if any people realise that, but it's already had was it like a
Free Palestine
banner put over it?
Yeah.
And there was even a photo on social media of a young woman with a placard standing in front of the cenotaph with a message which said "Keep the world clean," and a Star of David being placed into a litter bin on this sign in front of the cenotaph. So don't tell me that it is just coincidence.
No,
they are, as we started this conversation, they are in direct conflict with the values that this nation stands for. And by the way, not this nation only, but we have shared values with the nation of Israel. And that is why we're seeing it played out right now, and we will continue to see it the more this continues.
But the good thing I think about this is it is bringing to light the hatred that has been there all along.
I agree.
And I think now, I mean, a few weeks ago, before Israel was attacked on the 7th of October, like, we were talking about this as a minority. This was something you wouldn't turn on the news and be talking about Israel or about Palestinian protests or anything like that. We were talking about it. Our supporters were talking about it because we were aware of what was going on. Now, you cannot turn on the news without this being a key topic of conversation. And I think people's eyes now are being open to the fact that this hatred is there against Israel. It isn't just a hatred of Israel. It goes deeper than that. And I think, people are now waking up. So there is a good thing. This is now being brought to the light, and hopefully people will, start taking action against it.
I agree. This is... we have an opportunity we did not want, but an opportunity to really make a clear defense of Israel and a clear understanding that anti-Semitism has actually pre-existed, and we're now seeing it increase. And even like wearing a poppy, even something like that is we wear it because of our, first and foremost, because we want to respect and honour those who have fallen, those who have given their lives and served. But we must understand that there is a battle going on. And I think, even though I agree with you that let's hope that more people will wake up and understand, and perhaps they are, I also think there's a real battle going on, and we are quite a way from being in a position of sitting comfortably and assuming that we're all going to turn on the side of Israel. And because that poll which I referred to earlier, the Sky News poll, I have it here, and it says that it's a YouGov poll, by the way. Those who are 65 years and older, 30% of the UK, 65 plus, 30% are standing with Israel in the current situation, and 10% are on the Palestinian side. Their words. 22% of Israel versus 15% for the age 50 and 64. Now, if we jump to the 18 to 24-year-olds, 9% are standing with Israel, 46% are standing with the Palestinian
nearly half.
side. Yes, nearly half. Now, there are also figures in terms of standing with both sides equally. The 65 plus, 42% stand with both sides equally.
So they're neutral.
16% between of the ages 18 to 24.
Yeah, and I think that highlights a number of things.
That should shake us up.
Yeah.
Like if we need any alarm clock to wake us up.
Yeah.
And that is a huge mandate upon us as Christians.
Yeah.
And especially upon the way in which we communicate some of the values that we're talking about, represented by this, but also represented in that expression of Israel. We have got to target the 18 to 24-year-olds.
Yeah, because
we're going to be in a real mess.
Exactly. And we know that is happening now. I mean, whether not just about Israel, but a number of issues when it comes to school, when it comes to colleges, when it comes to social media, TikTok, all these things, they are being inundated with lies, misinformation, bad theology, bad ideologies, that sort of thing. Yeah. And there is no real kickback against it. And so I think in the future, if this trend doesn't change, in the future we will see a big shift in our country's beliefs and our country's morals and so forth. So it's a wake-up call.
And this is in light of the fact that on the 7th of October, Hamas terrorists entered into Israel and massacred innocent Israeli civilians in their homes, in their cars, did absolutely horrendous things, tortured before killing and maiming, and then taking 240 something Israelis as hostage. Right? That is in light. This is 1 month. We're just over 1 month now since that. Since the worst terrorist attack and the worst massacre since the Holocaust upon the Jewish people. And yet you would think that there would be a greater outpouring of sympathy towards Israel and towards the victims of that. You would expect there to be calls for a million march on the streets of London to call upon the release of those 200 and something plus hostages, which are still in Gaza, still being held captive by Hamas. Where is the outcry?
Exactly.
Where is the moral stand? We talked about the moral cause. Thankfully, our government is taking a moral stand of standing with Israel. But the pressure which is upon them to compromise is huge.
It is.
And so we just need to be aware of it.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think one of the things with all these, with all the different things that we're dealing with here, it's the same spirit behind it. And,
it is,
and unfortunately, they are winning certain battlegrounds, for example, with the young people. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. For example, a lot of young people believe the narrative that actually Hamas didn't target civilians because there are lies that have been going out. There's even the belief that it was Israel who had attacked themselves to cause this and so forth. There's a lot of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories out there that are being permeated online, especially through TikTok, which is where the young people are hearing this. They're hearing a lot of propaganda from different sources. Even, there was a teacher even who separated out Jewish students and things like that and did some anti-Semitic teaching on how Jews should be separated out because of how they treat Palestinians and so forth. It's like this is happening in schools here where there is this indoctrination that has permeated the school system and is affecting the youth, right? Because they are seeing this. They haven't developed critical thinking. They don't know the big picture about what's going on. So they're just hearing Israel's evil, Israel's bad, Israel's killing Palestinians. That's the narrative they're hearing, and it just builds up this this hatred of Israel within the youth. And that's what Hamas have been doing for decades in Gaza.
Yes.
You know, they've been, through UN-run schools, they've been teaching anti-Semitic lessons, brainwashing them into believing that they need to carry out terror attacks against Israel and liberate Palestine and all this stuff. It's the same tactic that's being used here under our noses.
Yes.
And it's the same thing with these protests. It's the same hatred of Israel that caused Hamas to invade Israel, to butcher women and children. You know, that same spirit is behind the protests that are out there in London, in our very streets.
Yes.
And that's why we have to stand against it, because like you're saying, it's kind of like the sort of D-Day, you know, D-Day battle where the Allies had to come together and actually make a big push against the Nazis.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. I think this is honestly like people are waking up and realizing, hang on, we have to do something about this, otherwise we will be overrun. I'm not saying we're going to war, by the way. I'm just saying
but
spiritually,
but we do need to call out the evil. We have to actually identify it.
Yeah.
This is my concern. When we took action, when Britain took action against Nazi Germany, it was like we identified what the evil was.
Yeah.
And we can't just base our opposition on the fact that, we don't really like these protests against Israel. I actually have to understand why we don't.
Yeah.
And it is the evil that we have to call it out. So I think it's very, very important that if our government are calling for this protest not to take place, and if we are to persuade the Met Police to not allow it, we actually have to be able to articulate why. And that is, I think, an area which we might come on to shortly, but that's an area where I think we need to do a lot more groundwork.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree.
So to help us in this endeavour and to help CUFI make a stronger stand for Israel and an impact in this nation, then we invite you to come alongside and support CUFI UK through making a donation. That donation can be a one-time gift, or it can be a regular monthly donation towards the work of Christians United for Israel UK. To do so, please go to www.cufi.org.uk/donate. And when you make a donation, you are helping us to make an even greater impact for Israel, to speak out for the truth, to help us in our campaigns, and to show our support for the Jewish people in standing out and speaking out against anti-Semitism. You're joining us in solidarity for this moral cause. In a nation where there is so many diverse opinions about whether Israel is in the right or whether the pro-Palestinian protests are in the right, this is the time for a moral clarity. And it stems everywhere from inside our parliament all the way through to the pulpits of our churches. This is our commission, and we need your help to enable us to fulfill this. So here is the URL link again to our website, cufi.org.uk/donate. And thank you so much for your support and everyone who has donated already. Please remember that any donation received at this time will receive this Aaronic Blessing magnet. This is a magnet you can place on your fridge, which is a wonderful reminder to lift up the Jewish people in our prayers. It includes the Hebrew and the English language version of Numbers chapter 6, verses 24 to 26, which says, "The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace." We would really love to send this to all supporters that make a donation at this time who live in the United Kingdom. You can find out how to receive one of these by going to the URL link on the bottom of your screen. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. And as well, we do also have CUFI Cares, which is now in operation, which is supporting Israel directly. And so this is where funding goes directly to Israel to help with ambulances, to help with medical supplies that they need, anything like that to help them physically to really be a blessing to the nation of Israel. So we've got a two-pronged approach, which is we want to educate people here in the UK, we want to tackle anti-Semitism here in the UK, stand with the Jewish community here in the UK, but we also want to bless Israel as well. And so that's what we're doing through that. One of the ways, though, we can stand with Israel is to be an active voice in support of Israel here in the UK. So we're talking about these anti-Israel protests. There have been, fortunately, some pro-Israel protests, and there's been a big difference between the two, where there's been reports of violence and disruption and intimidation from the pro-Palestinian protests. On the Israel side, they have been peaceful, they have not been confrontational, and they've been very much a symbol, I think, of showing the two sides, the good versus evil, that kind of thing. And so we now want to support a protest here in the UK, which is in defence of Israel. And it's on the 19th of November at 4 p.m. in central London. It is a Never Again is Now protest, which is a play on the never again, so the Holocaust never again, but also looking at what is happening with Israel. It's a call to bring the hostages home from Gaza back to Israel. And of course, it's a call for peace. We want Hamas to put down their weapons and not to attack Israel anymore. But unfortunately, they've chosen not to do that, which is why Israel has to do what it's doing. But we are for peace, we are for Israel, and we want to stand as a united voice in London. So we're joining with other organizations who are pro-Israel, we're joining with the Jewish community, and we'll be standing there shoulder to shoulder with them to show our support for Israel. If you want to attend, it'll be central London, 4 p.m, 19th of November. There will be police in attendance, CST is going to be involved. It's going to be very safe, it's going to be very peaceful. And this is a time where we can show, as Christians, we can show our love to the Jewish people. So please do plan on coming to London on the 19th of November. And the exact location will be revealed later on. But if you sign up to CUFI, Christians United for Israel, go to our website, cufi.org.uk/subscribe, and we will send you the details once we have them confirmed.
So moving on, Alex, we've spoken about the pro-Palestinian protests, but there's also been other acts of anti-Semitism and actions, against Israel, and one of those is the tearing down of posters that have been placed in various parts of the UK, quite a concentration of them in London. These posters show victims of the Hamas hostage taking. These are people, adults and children, that are currently held captive in Gaza. And a campaign group, I think it's the hashtag Bring Them Home group, have produced these posters, and various people have been putting them up around London in various places to raise awareness of their plight and of the fact that they have still not been released by Hamas. But there have been anti-Israel people that have been tearing them down, and tearing them down quite aggressively. Not tearing them down, because they don't agree with their position of where they've been placed, but literally tearing them down with an anti-Semitic, in my view, attitude. And it has been, quite disheartening to see, really.
Definitely. And there's even been family members of the victims who have placed these posters up, and then they've watched people tear down their family members who are currently being held by Hamas. So there's been some very emotional confrontations. Because they're saying, this is my family member and you're tearing it down. Why do you hate them? Unfortunately, I think there's a number of reasons why this happens. I think there is the anti-Semitic nature of it. I think there's the pro-Hamas nature, people who are supporting the actions of Hamas and saying this is a legitimate thing that happened because of the quote-unquote occupation, etc., which is obviously, not only is that, deluded, it's evil to say that. I mean, it's wrong. But I also think there is
also
like
Holocaust denial.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and there's
it's also victim
the
blaming.
same people who are denying the Holocaust.
Exactly.
Perhaps,
yeah, and I think it's also victim blaming, because I even heard a Labour politician saying, where was the Israeli army? Why didn't they protect? It's not Hamas's fault that they did this. It's the Israeli army that they allowed Hamas to do it. That kind of argument. And it's victim blaming, which is repugnant. It's horrible.
Yeah. It is also, and connected with the anti-Semitism as well, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But it all
comes from the same root, though. Let's be honest. And it's like a spiral, right? Once you, are we surprised that there are people tearing down posters of hostages, Israeli hostages? It's sickening. Yeah. But look, once you have a moral foundation that is like melting ice, you're not going to stop, and that's the warning.
Yeah.
Right. The anti-Semite will not stop.
Yeah.
And that's why we often see anti-Semitism. We always say it starts with words, and then it very soon becomes, physical actions.
Yeah.
And it can turn violent.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I mean, I think any neutral person can look at it, and if you're looking at children being killed in Israel, children being killed in Gaza, you can look at it and say, oh, this is terrible. You can actually have some neutrality there and you have sympathy for both sides. But what's happening is that with the anti-Israel sort of, the anti-Semitic attitude that's there, they have no sympathy for Jewish children. And that's a troubling thing. We should all look at those posters and be sympathetic to what has happened, but they're not at all. I think this also goes back to the propaganda as well. Even Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, he gave his speech last week where he was saying that it wasn't, Hamas didn't target civilians. It was Israel who killed their own people. They didn't kidnap people. He was basically lying and saying this thing. But there are some people who honestly believe that it's propaganda, it's lies, that there's no Israeli hostages in Gaza, that, they believe this false narrative that's going on. And I think that's part of the lies and the deception as well.
Anti-Semitism, you've mentioned victim blaming, you've mentioned denial of facts, and another one is conspiracy.
Yeah.
It's all part of the same...
Yeah, exactly.
Same root, isn't it?
Yeah, and unfortunately, this has actually, like you said, it has led to violence. So we have actually seen this week a Jewish man was killed in Los Angeles, California, in America, because he was standing with an Israeli flag, and a pro-Palestinian or anti-Israel protester holding a megaphone came up to him, hit him in the head. He crashed to the floor, banged his head on the floor, and died from internal bleeding.
I know.
And it shamefully, it was described by too many news outlets, but this one is NBC. They said Jewish man killed in altercation at dueling pro-Israel and pro-Palestinian rallies in California. They try and make it out that there was an altercation, that there was violence and stuff. No, this was a man by himself with an Israel flag who got jumped by a pro-Palestinian person who killed him. It is murder. And it is wrong. And the violence is only coming from one direction. It's not coming from the pro-Israel.
You're absolutely right. How many police officers have been attacked by the pro-Israel demos in London? 0. How many arrests of pro-Israel demonstrators have there been in Israel, in London? 0. How many pro-Israel demonstrators... demonstrators isn't the right word, but you know what I mean. Those who are holding vigil have thrown fireworks into rows of police officers.
I know.
0.
Exactly.
It is that spirit of anti-Semitism which does convert to violence very, very quickly. By the way, you mentioned Hezbollah. You just reminded me that there's a story this morning that Brazilian authorities have actually made arrests linked to a threat from Hezbollah targeting Jews in Brazil. Okay. What you hear from the mouthpiece of Hezbollah in Lebanon directed towards Israel, what they say regarding Israel, they mean Jews. That is why Jews are under threat in Brazil. Okay, a long way from Israel and a long way from Lebanon, right?
Yeah.
We have to make that connection, and we have to understand that their motives and their heart is anti-Semitic.
Yeah, exactly. And you've actually touched on something which reminded me as well. You told me before that the leader of the pro-Palestinian march this weekend is actually a Hamas leader.
Former Hamas.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is actually one of the leaders of the Muslim Association of Britain.
Right.
And he's a former Hamas leader, and he is actually the coordinator of the protests which are taking place.
Yeah. And so we can say he's a former Hamas leader. That I understand from some articles I read that he has been found guilty of funding the terrorist organization. He currently lives in the UK in a council house, or a former council house, which he managed to buy with like a very big discount and things like that. So basically he's being funded by the UK government. He's a former Hamas terrorist. He's met with people like Jeremy Corbyn. You know, there's so many different connections there, and he's leading this anti-Israel march free in this country. I just think there's a breakdown of the system there when you have that sort of thing, but that's obviously a discussion for another day. Yeah. But the thing is, it is just troubling that we're not dealing with hatred and we're not dealing with anti-Semitism properly. But there was also something you told me the other day, because we were discussing, we had a supporter actually contact us and they asked us, what can we do about Palestinian flags in her local area? And my first thought was, well, we can't really do anything. It's freedom of protest. But you actually came up with a clever idea, and you spoke to her, didn't you? So what do you recommend when?
Well, I'm not sure if it's a clever idea, but my advice, if anyone is wondering what to do, if they see Palestinian flags in their local area, is first of all, don't take matters into your own hands unless they're on your own property. One, for your own safety from the people who support having put the flag up. And also there are some quite complex bylaws in terms of removing even items which shouldn't be in a public place. So protect yourself. But there are actually ways in which we can get Palestinian flags removed if you're unhappy with them being placed. And so, for example, if they are placed on a private property by a pro-Palestinian supporter, it is actually very difficult to get that removed because it is their own property. However, if it is placed in a position in a local area, which is, for example, if it is placed opposite a Jewish premises, a Jewish business, a Jewish school, a synagogue, or an area where there might be a large concentration of Jewish population, then you could quite rightly say that that is a form of intimidation. Right. And on that basis, it would be advisable to go to the police and report it.
Yeah, as a criminal matter.
Yeah. So we'll report it and to explain that it's regarded an expression, expression of intimidation. So on that basis, and to go that route rather than to go to the local councils, because some of these flags are being placed in local councils where there might be some sympathies towards the Palestinian cause. So just bear that in mind. If it is in an area which you think the flag is being placed to intimidate Jews, then that's a matter for the police. Otherwise, if it is on, for example, a lamppost, then it shouldn't be on there. Yeah. And so, therefore, you can report that to the local. That wouldn't necessarily be a matter for the police. It would be a matter for the local authority. And it could well be, if it's in London, for example, it would be a matter of the Transport for London. So report it to the Transport for London. Yeah. If you see a flag on a lamppost where it shouldn't be. Yeah. So those are a few practical ways in which you can take some action if you see Palestinian flags around the area.
And the good news is that the flags which the lady reported to us have now been removed by the local authority in that area, which is great news. Yeah. And I think it is important that we follow the rules. We do everything we can to try and, combat anti-Israel hatred, because it is ultimately anti-Semitic hatred. And I think this leads us on to our scripture for the day, because as Christians, we need to remember that this is not just a fight against the Jews. This is, what starts in Israel does not end in Israel.
You're right. Yeah.
It's going around the world, and this isn't just anti-Semitic; it's anti-God.
Yes.
When they're going against Israel, they're going against something God ordained. God established this. He set Israel as a nation. He chose the Jewish people for His plans and purposes. And when people are going against them with anti-Semitism, it is because of a hatred which is. It's deeper than anti-Semitism. It's spiritual.
Absolutely,
right?
It is. Yeah.
And so that's why we need to stand against it.
Yeah.
And we need to speak out. And we need to act.
Yes. And we, being Christians.
Yes.
Because, as part of as the understanding of our faith, we must recognize that there is a mandate to stand with Israel and to stand with the Jewish people. And the scripture that I'd like to read is 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 2 to 4. And it says this. This is the Apostle Paul writing to Timothy. Preach the word. Be ready in season and out of season. Convince, rebuke, exhort with all long-suffering and teaching. For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but according to their own desires, because they have itching ears, they will heap up for themselves teachers, and they will turn their ears away from the truth and be turned aside to fables. And then you continue in verse 5, but you be watchful in all things. Now, I'm going to stop there because I just wanted to highlight the fact that, the Bible prophesies that there will be a time where there will be a turning away from truth and towards fables. And fables are made up stories, and we're seeing those in the expression of anti-Semitism, actually. But as you've just rightly said, anti-God, okay, is what anti-Semitism is. But then Paul, the Apostle Paul, challenged Timothy to, and I like these words, if we think of them individually now, convince. Okay? We need to convince. This is not talking about sitting back and being, backseat Christians. It means to actually put our faith into action and into words and convince.
Yeah.
Okay? Rebuke. Oh, I'm not sure if I'm prepared to put my neck above the parapet on this particular issue. We maybe don't like the feeling that sometimes we might have to rebuke. But no, there are times, there are seasons. Remember, preach the word, be ready in season and out of season. Yeah. So there's a season where we have to speak out.
Yeah.
And he said, convince, rebuke, exhort. Okay, we need to exhort as well. We need to, speak the truth and encourage one another with the truth. With all long suffering, so with all patience and teaching. And then he says, for the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine. Well, actually, sound doctrine is really, really important.
Yeah.
Okay, we can't just. It's wonderful to have a feeling of support for Israel, but that feeling actually must be based upon teaching of the word and upon sound doctrine. Yeah. And where there is a lack of sound doctrine in churches relating to Israel, for example, replacement theology, it is actually ground for anti-Semitic attitudes to express itself through the church, and that we have to reject that completely and entirely. So I just want to encourage us to be ready in this season, to speak with, to convince, to rebuke, and to exhort. Yeah, and we stand with Israel. Amen.
Definitely. Amen. Yeah, that's great. And to close now, one of the ways we can do that, to stand for Israel, to do what God is commanding, is to join together and to speak out on behalf of Israel, to not be intimidated, not be fearful, to know that we are on the right side, that God is on our side, and God has promised that we know the end of the book. We've read the ending. We know the victory is assured, and so we need to stand on that word. We need to be confident in God, because he is in control.
Yeah.
And so if people do want to join with us at CUFI to support us in our work, if you would like to donate, as we mentioned before, please do go to cufi.org.uk/donate. And if you would like to know more about the event that's coming up on the 19th of November, so it's 4 p.m. Central London, 19th of November, it's a Sunday, please do go to cufi.org.uk/subscribe, and we will send you all the details once we have the information confirmed. But it will be a real good time to stand with Israel, to have an active voice, an active show of support for Israel in our capital city, and to try and show that even though the odds may be against us in London, we're not afraid. We will stand up for the truth.
Yes.
And it will be a really good time.
Yeah, we're not going to let London go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And we're not going to let this nation go.
Yeah.
We're going to make a stand, and we're going to make a stand for righteousness.
That's right.
And even if we're in the minority, I'd rather be in the minority and stand on the word of God than be in the million majority and be in the wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and actually, with God on our side, we're in the majority. So there you go.
And on that note, we would like to thank you for listening and watching, for standing with us and supporting us here at Christians United for Israel. And until next time, may the Lord be with you, bless you, and keep you. Goodbye.